All right, it being 7 p.m. on May 2nd, 2018, I'd like to call the LED Strategic Planning Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Here.
James Fisher.
Here.
Richard Flynn.
Here.
Thomas Hummel.
Here.
Liz Sullivan.
Here.
Emily Suset.
Here.
Lonry Wayne.
Here.
Tatiana Weinstein.
Here.
Beth McCollum.
Here.
Elizabeth Hopkins.
Here.
Will Savage.
Here.
We have a quorum is present. Item 2 on the agenda, is opportunity for visitors to speak. Do either of the visitors wish to address the committee?
Ellie.
All right. Then we will move along to item 3, which is the approval of the minutes of the March 21st, 2018 Strategic Planning Committee meeting. The draft minutes were in your packet.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for March 21st, 2018 Strategic Planning Committee meeting.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? We'll let Chris do a roll call.
Marjorie Bartelli.
Yes.
Richard Flynn.
Aye.
Thomas Hummel.
Aye.
Liz Sullivan.
Yes.
Liz Suset.
Aye.
Lonry Wayne.
Aye.
Elizabeth Hopkins.
Aye.
Will Savage.
Aye.
The motion passes. The minutes are approved. Item 4 on the agenda and the main body of the meeting is to review the notes from our last meeting and to discuss the focus areas and potential objectives. Does the director wish to?
Okay. So a little recap. At our last meeting, we said that the strategic plan should serve as our roadmap or our blueprint for the next 3 to 5 years, and we'll determine how long the strategic plan would be. And we want to agree upon some focus areas within our organization for the next however many years. As in, are there aspects of the organization that need improvement? Do we have some deficiencies? Do we need some change somewhere? Are there development opportunities for us, advancements? The new strategic plan should address those areas. At our first strategic plan meeting, we went over the entire history of how we got to this point. Members were provided documents that corresponded with the various meetings we've had, from the Facility Steering Committee to the space study to community engagement PowerPoint and the last strategic plan. And our very last meeting, we discussed other example plans from other institutions, and we list aspects that we thought were key in developing focus areas for us, or buckets for us. We also discussed some potential areas in and around the facility that may need attention or enhancement, and we listed those areas as well. I emailed those whiteboard notes to everybody, and I also emailed a form to all of our members with the understanding that we may add or subtract from those lists of ideas. And the form had all of the whiteboard notes on them, and then allowed for some check boxes to be able to rank those areas. So I have the results. I tallied them as of like 3 o'clock today. So let's pass those out and then talk about them. There you go. Okay. I'm just going to run over some very general ideas, and then we can discuss them. The first part asked if you thought the area is more of a focus area or a guiding principle that would relate to the focus area. And you know that the last strategic plan had 5 focus areas, and we can choose however many we see fit for us in the future. And just to note, you'll notice that some people did leave some blank, so that was an option. The second part asked about opinions regarding areas in and around the facility, because we assume that the facility would become a focus area, and I think you can see that indeed it will be, because 11 of us chose that to be a focus area. But in terms of the facility, we asked if, did you think the area was an important area, or were you unsure of its importance, or do you think this area is not an important goal for the strategic plan? And so all of those are tallied on this sheet here. So let's take a look and discuss what we see. I'll start with, obviously the facility is a leader in terms of focus area. All of us thought that was important. Coming in second was technology. And then other areas are advocacy, efficiencies, and then coming in fifth, there was a tie, three-way tie between organizational culture, training, lifelong learning. Now, just because you chose something on this form, it doesn't mean it can't change today when we discuss it. And again, this is just to generate our conversation today. We should discuss how we define these areas, though. Remember that we pulled these references, diversity, facility, efficiencies, and advocacy. A lot of them came from the example plans that we were all talking about. So we pulled those titles or headings out from them. But we can define them in however we see fit. We can add or subtract, of course. So our goal tonight is to hone down this list to the focus areas we think are important for us. I do want to start, though, before we start really digging into this, is I want to all be in agreement to the term. Are we going to use focus area, or are we going to use the term like objective? I think we should pick one term, because most strategic plans either use the term like objective, and then below them we list the strategies or the action plans. So what word do we like? I just want to start out simple. We like focus area or objective?
I think the word objective should retain its traditional meaning as a specific part of a goal. So I think in this context, focus area probably is clearer.
Anybody else? I'd like to hear from everyone.
I agree with Richard.
Okay.
I'm good with focus, like it.
Okay, focus area, we'll use that term. All right. So I just want to talk about the term focus area so we know what we're talking about. We're all on the same page. And so I see the focus area as an umbrella or heading, a key area where we will list strategies to achieve success, whatever we determine as success. And then the term guiding principle is basically a characteristic or a standard or some attribute that will attend to that focus area. In other words, it's like language that will support it.
Dr. Before we go too far, could I just point out something that I had emailed to you, which is many of these items can be both buckets and guiding principles.
Agreed.
So I hope we don't fall into a trap of being too binary. It's a bucket, so it can't be a guiding principle. It can be both. Some of these can be both.
I think that's a reasonable point.
I know I selected both of them, so.
True. True. Okay, so I started the conversation. Is there anything that jumps out that we want to look at? Eventually, I'd like to take some notes and talk about how we define these areas. So we're all on the same page. We all agree upon what we mean by diversity. What do we mean by efficiency? What do we mean by partnerships? We will do that, but does anybody have any comments about what they see here? Surprises or?
I forgot to ask you if I could add one, which would be fiscal responsibility.
Sure. We can add anything we agree is important. So are you adding that as a bucket or as a guiding principle?
A bucket.
So do we want to go around and talk about whether we think it's a bucket or a guiding principle?
For any of them, or?
For the new one that was just
this one.
added.
I was under the impression, at least Tom, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what you meant by efficiencies when we put that as a bucket.
Part of it. I mean, it's,
Oh,
yeah.
So I think that it would fall, like the buckets we want to be really like large focus areas, and not that fiscal responsibility isn't important enough to maybe deserve its own focus area, but efficiencies, we want to make these broad enough that we can fit a lot of different things under there. And I think we can fit other things we want to work on as well as fiscal responsibility under the term efficiencies.
I think one goes,
Yeah,
I don't care which one, but I think one goes under the other.
Okay.
I mean, it could be
Exactly.
like fiscal responsibility, and like underneath it could be like efficiencies, partnerships, perhaps, sharing services for sure, grant writing even. So, I mean, those four with fiscal responsibility can tie in together.
So when we start listing
Yeah.
definitions, we can do that. But how about what's there? What people see? Is there anything that jumps out or you have questions about?
I had trouble remembering what organizational culture was.
Well, we're going to define that. We'll define that.
That's kind of how I was with efficiencies too, because I was thinking of all the different kind of things with efficiencies, and I was trying to remember like exactly how our conversation.
I think even though we don't have a target for how many of focus area, but definitely I think sometimes less is more of resources to have, or maybe there's duplication overlap that you just mentioned. I think we need to say, no more than 5, probably 3, between 3 to 5 would be a good number to I think to shoot for.
Okay, well, anybody else want to talk?
The only thing I'll say in regards to efficiencies, and maybe I'm wrong or misreading this, but like, if there's like 11 votes, so to speak, on this, I know that 5 had it as bucket and 6 had it as a guiding principle, so maybe I'm wrong, but it could be like all 11 at least voted for it in one. or
Yeah, I
something.
just did one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there could have
Okay.
been 12 tallies because some
Okay,
people
gotcha.
voted twice.
Gotcha,
But
okay.
again, this is really fluid. Some people's minds might change after we start
Mm-hmm.
defining them. So if we define diversity as something that you didn't think meant what others thought, you may pull out of that or add into that. So this is just to generate conversation.
But I mean, based on numbers, is overwhelmingly we know everybody, majority of us agree that facility and technology innovation are the 2 key focus areas. So the next debate is what would be the next, right? Is fiscal responsibility or efficiency, or or you can bucket like advocacy sometimes underneath it. I mean, I'm just thinking about what is the next focus areas beyond those 2, assuming we have no debate for the first 2.
Well, it looks like all of these things that are listed, I mean, we all thought they either, not everybody, because if you add them up, so the first line, 9 people thought that diversity and inclusivity was an important target area. So 2 people did not, but the majority thought that this was important. So you can see that there's a lot of agreement in terms of like that these headings or references were meaningful.
Mhm.
They came from those example plans, or they just, someone personally generated that, so it made sense. So I guess if we don't have any more to say about this, we can start talking about what we mean by these terms. So I'm gonna start with diversity and inclusion. I think, so what I like is just some words that we think we mean by diversity.
Can that also get tied in with advocacy and outreach?
Anything we add, I think we should talk
Okay.
and talk about what we mean by, if we were to focus on diversity, what does that mean?
Diversity usually means arranging so that members of the community of many different demographic groups, not just race, are represented at the table. And inclusion usually means that among those represented at the table, provision is made for full participation. And the classic example people often give is a board might decide to extend its diversity by having a single mother, a young single mother at the board. So that demographic group is represented. Inclusion would mean making sure that the meetings are held at a time when that person can attend. So going into the institutional structure and being creative with that to make sure that all those around the table are really able to participate. So the key words would be demographic, participation, and table.
Before I start writing, I shouldn't start writing. Do we all agree to that definition? That's one definition, there might be others.
There was demographic, and then what were the other 2?
Participation.
Participation. I'm just gonna write them down and I'll cross them out if I need to.
We're going to check your spelling, too.
I'm writing sloppy on purpose.
I think that's definitely part of it. When I look at it, I see that the library offers materials and services that that represent the diversity of the people within the district, so that we offer what the people, what all the different types of people need and want.
Okay. Any other words that would fall under this heading?
For me, it also has the idea of like welcoming. When you think about inclusive, you're welcoming, not, welcoming people to come in.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and also kind of a recruiting, right, and training with staff members and so forth to reflect or understand what diversity means and how to provide service to the diverse community.
Okay. Anybody else? I had accessibility on here for mine.
Write it.
Yeah.
Goes along with what Emily said about being welcoming. Also making sure along the accessibility line that while you are being welcoming to everyone, everyone has the ability to use all the resources you have available as well.
Right. And then to Jay's point, material services, I also had programs, which is service, but I think it's also separate from service. Anything else?
What about hiring?
I think that's
Recruiting
just
and training and
recruiting.
all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
My concern is that I see this developing into a great big chart where several things under diversity are also going to be checked off under this one and that one and this one. Is that okay if that's what it evolves to?
This isn't gonna be, this is, my goal is that we all understand what we mean by diversity. So if we all agree that the term diversity means everything under here, demographics, participation, material services, programs, welcoming, recruiting, training, and accessibility. So we all know when we talk about diversity in a strategic plan, these are the elements.
Can we add facilities? I'm thinking of like bathroom facilities or ramps.
Accessibility.
What do we mean by demographics?
Want to answer?
Subsets of the population.
So I guess if the population is X percent this, Y percent this, Z percent this, how do we use that to achieve diversity? I mean, what is our goal? Is our goal to represent the X and the Y and the Z percentage relative to our resident base? Is that our goal? I don't know. the
Probably
answer.
will be eventually, but right now it seems that we're just getting some basic concepts and terminology, and to arrange those into goals will probably be the next step. Then objectives will be the third step.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're just talking about because I know that I spoke with some members and they were unsure of like what this meant. So I think this is not a hard one to define, but there may be others on the list that are a little more like, what do we mean by efficiencies? I think we may have different ideas about that, but it seems like we have a similar idea about what we mean by diversity. So that was an easy one to start with. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, and then we're
Why don't you
talking
hung
about.
up on the wall, so like when we go through it, some of the duplication, or we can reference back to it.
Why doesn't somebody help her? I mean, that's a good suggestion. But we need Tom to be Vanna.
I was just gonna say, I'll be a White.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
So, facility should be easy too. Facility, okay. I think we mean the building, right?
Yes.
As well as
The campus.
campus. Anything else? Properties, how about the properties? This is easy. Anything else?
This is where I get confused about technology, because technology goes in the building, but I don't have a strong feeling as to whether or not we list it here.
I think it's its own.
Okay.
It's its own. I mean, I think it would go here. It belongs to the building.
Because to me,
Like
this
this
is
broad
yeah, this is more
definition.
physical infrastructure, that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
right?
The building, could we separate out interior and exterior?
That's
That's building and campus, but in and out. Okay. All right.
How did you? Do you want to write
Let's not
infrastructure
dwell.
on there?
Hmm?
Infrastructure.
Physical infrastructure, so this is physical, and then there's
Yeah.
a virtual, there's a technology, I would
Okay.
say more of a virtual
Got it.
infrastructure.
Okay. All right, these are good words, okay. This is Tom, if you can first. Fine.
Organizational culture.
All right.
Underneath, yeah, I think that'd be good, because we got quite a few.
Okay, organizational culture, that was in one or two of the example plans, and I have a list of things I think, do you want me to start? Okay. I wrote, so what I think of as organizational culture is, I just want to repeat myself, it's the culture that we're in, the organization, the institution. I have code of conduct, I have policy writing, I have training, I have relationships with organizations and other organizations in town, and then I have like value. So that's how I defined organizational culture.
I would include, I like all those, and I would include the things that patrons see when they use our facility, which is the attitudes of the staff.
Maybe professional staff.
Okay, I just want to hear everybody before I start writing.
Probably like training and or training.
Training?
Yeah, that was what I.
So we all say training. Policies?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm. I like where you have values, that's kind of like the most important element, or
Values.
what is the value of the organization, reflect this culture.
Anything else about the culture? Oh, what did you say, Beth? I'm sorry.
Professional staff, librarianship.
Okay. Anything else that jumps out when we talk about organizational culture? What do you think of? That we have. Nothing else? Nobody?
You know, when I think of like the culture, like I think of the idea of like working together as a team kind of stuff. Like that's what kind of pops into my head when I think about,
Teamwork?
yeah.
But that would be part of the values, you know, that's,
What about cross-training? I mean, I guess they could fall under training, not separate for cross-training.
And that one would also appear under efficiencies, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be some there across multiple.
There's gonna be overlap.
Anything else for organizational culture? So we know what we're talking about.
Well, the thing people always say about the Lisle Library is how helpful and professional and friendly the staff are. That's why I'm going to advocate again for attitudes, an attitude of friendliness, acceptance.
That's kind of like values?
It's a value. I think values might be kind of broad. Maybe we, at some point, will break that down. Which values do we
Well, we
mean?
can, yeah, we can break it down under this, I think.
I mean, there are lots of libraries that do what we do, but everyone who talks about it says we have such a good attitude about the way we do it.
Thank you.
Next. Data-driven decisions.
Okay. What do we mean by data-driven decisions?
I think decisions should be based on either data collected, authenticated research. And I was always taught that it's always better to make estimates in your data rather than make decisions. Just saying, I don't have perfect data. You know what I mean? Because if you say, hey, I don't have perfect data, so I'm just going to make a decision with no data, that's a situation that oftentimes organizations get into. So I guess it's estimate the data, use data you've collected and make decisions, or use authenticated research to make decisions.
So it would be authenticated research.
Authenticated
Yeah.
research?
Where applicable. We had this discussion last time. Some things you can't quantify, but when you can, have a good reason for what you're doing. Have a quantitative reason for what you're doing when you can.
So I would say it is just a fact-based decision-making process. The fact-based doesn't have to be just numbers, it could be any other things we consider as fact, right?
How much of this is just the reason why you hire professional staff for us to be expected to do this regardless? Like, I know Elizabeth and I, that's how we order books, that's how we decide what programs to do, that's how everything we do is based off of all the stats that Paul and we all track. This seems to me like something that it's part of a staff duty that this is why you hire librarians. We don't hire non-professionals to do this because it's just part of the job description.
Yeah,
No, I think you're totally right. I don't think I think we're at this point of the discussion, we're affirming what we do. We're not saying that we don't do it, we need to start doing it.
Okay.
We're affirming that we do it and we think it's important to do.
Okay.
But I-
And to continue to do.
Yeah,
And
but I-
defining
but I
what
think
it means.
This also probably goes back to, since I've been on the board, I mean, there's been multiple trustees over the years that are always looking at the data sheet and always talking about metrics and stuff like that. So, I mean, like just for, I don't want to say benchmarking, but like more, like on the circulation reports or the usage reports we get, like drilling down further. I know you've actually expanded it to 1 month.
So like statistics?
Yeah, statistics definitely, for sure.
But I think what you said, benchmarking is a good,
Yeah.
it's a good word too,
Yeah.
data-driven.
Cause, and I mean, especially like with circulation, the question I always had is, like when you see like the usage numbers, I'm trying to think, it's like 12,000 or so a month. Are those 12,000 individuals, or is that 3,000 people coming in 4 times a month? So I'd like to see like, are those 12,000 unique individuals, or is that repeat numbers? Some of that stuff, or if there's a way, I know we can't, disclose patron information, but I'm always interested to see too, like what areas in the district are being served and what are underserved. Like, is like everybody that's in a 1 mile radius, for example, is that where most of our users are, or like somewhere in the southwest corner of the district, in like far southwest Green Trails, are they not coming? So I'd like to see like some type of, I don't know how this would be.
Drill down?
Drill down, like, is like, what area, is there an area that's underserved? Is it spread out? It's pretty equal, like every part of the district is using the library basically at the same percentage, or is it one area underserved, one area is higher participation?
I wonder if
Well, I
that would
think-
be under advocacy and outreach.
I mean, it could be. It
Well, I
could
think
be.
those are all good things
Yeah.
to talk about. I just want to define what we mean by, so I think.
It's
Right,
statistics.
but yeah, or statistics or
benchmarking.
analysis,
Yeah,
right?
Reputable
yeah,
stuff.
statistics and
I
analysis.
like the word analysis.
Yeah,
I
it could
think
be
that's
analysis,
important.
yeah.
Okay.
And then just finishing up on that too is, like I was saying, and also like what age group is it? Most of the, like, is it 14 and under are majority of the card holders? Is it, and that gets back down even to diversity, that you could start seeing, okay, we know that the various demographics are these percentage, and this percentage is definitely participating, but this demographic or two is underrepresented, they're not using services, so that could also tie in the diversity as well.
Okay, so we all understand what we mean by data-driven decision. Okay, so move on. Got 2 here. Okay, then we have partnerships.
Tatiana, I think I put on my survey, I had a question. If you could explain the difference between partnerships and sharing services.
Well, that's
I
not
mean-
for me to, that's for us to talk about.
It's definitely related in some capacity.
Right.
Because, I mean, those I think.
I mean,
other than my-
I'm sure it can be
partnerships,
differentiated,
yeah.
but I just want to make sure, can we combine them?
Well, that's why
or-
we're here. That's why we're
Okay, so,
here.
well, partnerships could be either intergovernmental,
Okay,
I'm sorry, Tom.
intergovernmental, so like
Oh,
other,
okay.
whether libraries, other
Yes,
local governments.
that part, yeah.
okay.
It could be other not-for-profits. perhaps. Or corporate as well. Corporate like donations.
What do others think of the term partnerships when you think about strategic planning?
Collaboration, thanks.
Collaboration between,
Entity outside of the library, in the library ecosystem, what do you call it?
With
Universe.
with the universe.
Could that
With
over-
those folks or with the
others?
universe? Anybody
But
else?
could that overlap then, though, with some, the sharing services?
Or even
Collaboration?
outreach,
Yes.
something
Right.
like,
I'm not sure that I see a significant difference between partnerships and sharing services. I would combine the two.
I mean, it's definitely related, I would say. I mean, part of the sharing services is probably more intergovernmental,
yeah.
Mhm.
I would say, than the other ones.
Today, I would agree with you.
Mhm.
But what if we approach a corporation and they're willing to share something with
Well,
us?
that's true too.
You know,
guess.
I don't wanna-
Oh, no, I agree.
Use the past to predict the future all the time.
So what word do we like?
For,
If we're gonna combine,
I would keep it separate for now, but I mean, eventually it might get combined.
I would just say partnerships / sharing services, because then we're not being redundant, we're
But then,
rolling it all together.
but then would we add grant writing then on that too? Because that kind of,
that's its own.
No, that's.
it is, that's what I mean, but then that could fall under partnerships and sharing service. And it's
I don't know if
sharing
that
service,
necessarily
but
goes under-
partnerships, you don't know, okay.
I don't think grant writing
Okay.
is a partnership.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
All right.
I mean, I just don't.
Oh, that's fine.
I agree.
That's fine.
Agreed, agreed.
I'm wrong.
I think partnerships can be sort of like where you're seeking out expertise in the community.
Mhm.
You wanna elaborate?
Well, for example, if we were setting up a long-term program, maybe with the Arboretum or something, where we brought in those experts to help us.
So,
Yeah, that could actually.
Collaboration.
Yeah, that's collaboration.
Maybe fellow, yeah, like, or some type of programming, like whether it's Arboretum or some business specializing in something they could kind of, I mean, we kind of do that, I guess, with taxes and do we like somebody like investments, like with seniors and stuff, don't we like have, like financial advisors come in once in a while for programs? Yeah,
we
so that-
do.
Yeah.
I mean, we can write like a cost sharing, I mean, what I wrote for my notes under partnerships were things like this, collaborating with other entities, but also cost sharing with other entities under this.
Yep.
So, like recently, we had a partnership with Lisle Heritage Society and
The Women's Club.
the Women's Club for a program, and it was a cost sharing experience. Okay, are we good with this?
So, just before you move on, so sharing services that's taken care of, the sharing services below here, like we just were doing that.
No,
right
we
now.
will
We're
hit
gonna
that
do
again, we will hit that.
We're gonna do it again, okay.
Yep. Efficiencies. What do we mean by efficiencies?
Process reengineering.
Say it again?
Process reengineering.
Want to describe what that means?
Sure. You take a process that you do today and you break it down into very minute steps. You usually do it with sticky notes, because what you want to do is you want to take a look at a process because maybe it's grown over time and it's not as optimized as you want. So you take the process that it is today and you create the optimal process. So that's what process reengineering is.
Does
It's like a
everybody
process
agree with
mapping.
that?
It's like,
Mapping?
well, no, that's what she says. You know,
Right.
I would just say there's another word instead of reengineering, it's a process mapping.
Yeah, mapping
Or
is.
value stream mapping, we
Yes,
call
yes.
Say again?
it. Don't,
Okay.
I don't think, well.
You don't think it's this?
I-
Well,
I mean,
I
it's
want us
depends.
to
I mean, any
agree.
value stream mapping, you could, any process, whether it's governmental or private, you know, it's just a process to map out the process, identify where the inefficiencies. So it's just a tool, value stream mapping, to map out the process.
So I want to define what we think efficiencies would mean for us in a strategic.
I would say operating efficiencies, and I know the one thing that always seems to come up is the 2 circulation areas, but.
So operational.
Operational efficiencies.
As we talk about efficiencies, and this occurred to me right after the last meeting, certainly for government work, efficiency isn't a standalone goal, a standalone ideal. Lots of, it's not like a linear hierarchy of values with efficiency at the top, where most people think efficiency means doing what you're doing for the least amount of money. Doing things responsibly, yes. Responsible stewardship, yes. But efficiency always goes hand in hand with ideas like access, like outreach. And sometimes you have to sacrifice a little bit of efficiency to achieve another goal, another value. So I don't ask you to write anything down necessarily, unless you can think of a good one, but I really hope we can keep that in mind. We're not, I don't think we should be in the business of doing things at the cheapest possible cost just because we think that's what efficiency means. Sometimes
Well, that's why we're defining it here.
Well, yeah, and I just thought that had to be said, so that we can, not get trapped by language bewitchment, as they call it.
Well, that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, maybe that's Richard, maybe that's a good point. So instead of saying efficiency, because everybody thinks efficiency is cost-driven, you just lower costs. But almost like when you talk about efficiency, maybe you also consider effectiveness, right?
Yes.
So that's more, have to balance
Yes.
the cost benefit.
Productiveness,
And then we talked about cross-training, I think you said that could fit under here too.
that's operational.
How about benchmarking? Does that also lead to sometimes lead to efficiencies, or is that one
Sometimes
step
it does.
removed?
Sometimes it does not.
I don't know if
always.
it's like too far removed.
No, that's okay, because you talk about another process to drive efficiency.
Yeah, we're not saying that we're committing ourselves to benchmarking, but we're just saying that the ideas sort of go together.
I had productive under there, and then practical, and if we were talking about cost, I said practical budgeting, practical spending, but that's all.
What if you add the word practical? Because I think that's important, it's an important concept.
Anything else for efficiencies? Okay. We'll do that. All right. Here we go. Tech. And then we had the word innovation.
I hate to start it out this way, but it links back to technology may lead to efficiencies, or efficiencies may demand technology. So there's a linkage there. I don't know if it's appropriate to put it there.
I just keep thinking about the fact that right now we're trying to just define what they all mean to us, because we had these 2 different columns, like if it was like a key focus area or if it was like a guiding principle.
Right.
And so I feel like efficiencies, again, this is just me personally, but I feel like that's more of a guiding principle that we would want to see carried over in all of our buckets or our focus areas, if that makes sense. Like that's how I'm viewing it myself in my head.
Yes.
So there is carryover between the different things because we'll see it reflected in the focus areas. I don't know, I mean, does that make sense?
Maybe I'm spending too much time on drilling down.
Trying to
whereas-
separate them out?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just talking about the definition. What do we
Yeah.
mean, this should be simple, what do we mean by technology? I'll start. I think it's hardware, software, electronic, digital.
Materials? Yes.
And also automation, because
Right, okay, so we'll list some of those. Automation. What else did I say?
Digital.
Hardware, software,
The
electric.
Electronic material, I saw electronic material, digital materials.
Digital.
Yeah, and then we can talk about IT infrastructure, that's what you mentioned, software, hardware.
Right.
Might jump in ahead if I.
Or the plan.
Yeah.
like an ID plan.
Am I jumping ahead when I would mention like the RFID? Is that? would
I think that would be techno.
Okay, yeah.
I think that would be
yeah,
techno with
okay.
it.
But that very specific.
I just didn't know if it's too specific, yeah.
Do we want to just include, like, technology, digital communications from a physical or wireless, somewhere in the network? We don't want to be technologically isolated, and that's why we have, fiber rings, that's why we
Maybe
have.
cloud-based technology or something, I don't know if you want to say that.
I think that's where it goes to innovation, to make sure that we're on
Right.
keeping up
Right.
with the technological change.
Updated, or whatever other words you want to use.
And I don't know if you want to put this on here or not, or if it goes in one into something else, but I know there's always been talk, like, with maybe sharing IT with other local governmental units, that might be more partnership than anything, and I know that
That's more
didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, we're defining
No,
what
that's fine.
we mean by technology or innovation.
That's fine.
Well,
How
I would,
about server? Server is part of what we, is that on?
Hardware, software, yeah.
I still think that there's access, that which is different than cloud.
With databases, or is that kind of already, would you consider?
That's digital.
Okay.
But like these elements, like the word access, I think belongs under, like, when we're talking about technology, we're talking about access, we're talking about hardware, we're talking about software, we're talking about automation, these are all good. I just want us to be on the same page about the words we use in relation to this. Okay. You could go on that wall, actually.
Okay.
Advocacy. I just have to say before we move on, I think advocacy, outreach, and awareness are very similar, and we have advocacy, outreach, and then we have awareness. But there are different elements to each word. So who wants to start with advocacy?
See, my first word under there would be, you do advocacy and outreach to kind of like not only achieve awareness, but achieve serving the community. So it's very hard for me to separate awareness from those two.
I took it as our communication with our constituents, with the members of the district, sort of the outreach. This is making sure that they are aware of what we have and the opportunities that the library offers them.
What did others think this meant?
I was thinking about just like when the library's at different events outside of the library, like there was something recently I saw on Facebook that said like that they were at, I can't remember where the library was, I'm sorry. The Village Hall, and they were there set up so that people could get new library cards and like that kind of stuff.
Talk about services.
That to me is like some falls under outreach. But also like going and doing things like the librarians that come to the preschool or that go to elementary schools, like that's outreach to me also.
I agree with all that. I think that the term advocacy, if you want to keep with that word, includes an element of proactive. So not just having a discussion of what services and programs the library offers, but proactively inviting people to help to use the library to meet their needs.
Okay, so what words do we want to, how do we want to define what this means? I heard a lot of good ideas.
I like the word proactive under there.
Yeah, proactive, or I was thinking about promotion, but yeah, maybe
Oh.
proactive is a better word.
I like promotion.
Promotion's good too.
I was thinking marketing, but I like promotion better.
Yeah.
Well, I like marketing
Four
too.
Ps,
Yeah.
4 Ps.
There was a
Okay.
time when we wanted to.
We could write integrated marketing communication. I mean, to be technically accurate.
This could go back to like on the data-driven topic, like where I'd say statistics, like who's using it, who's not. Is there some area that's underserved? Because then if you can pull that data, eventually you can say, okay, we got to outreach to this demographic or this area of the district. And then if it goes with the promotion or marketing, I know people still like the newsletter, which is fine, but I think, you know, as we move forward, obviously, electronic communications.
I think what you're talking about is the strategy.
Okay.
So we're talking about the definition of what we mean by advocacy and outreach. So we're talking about proactive, like plans for advocacy, we're talking about promotion, and then someone said service, you were saying something?
I was thinking engagement. Right.
Engagement.
And I think Jay said communication, and I think the communication works both ways. The library gets to hear from the public, and the public gets to hear from us, or the library.
Okay, so I put engagement, communication. What was it? I forgot one other someone said.
Someone said marketing.
Proactive,
Oh, but it was like
promotion,
not services.
services.
Maybe it was services, but that's promotion of, or.
I would maybe put like collaboration, because a perfect example is, this kind of goes into governmental too, is when I was here for the last art gallery opening, one of the visitors said, and I think they might have been part of the exhibit too, they said, this isn't on the village newsletter, on the village website. And so I said, I know, so, and that's where I think.
Say it is or
It
is
is,
not?
it wasn't on the village, like, website or the village, like, calendar of events.
Yeah.
I know we're two separate entities, but I think that's where I would like to see all the governments kind of locally combine and, like, advertise each other's events, or saying, okay, whether it's at the village is like the center point of it or not, like, yeah, Wednesday, May 2nd, these are the events, like Park District has this, Library District has this, Village has a.
Do you know, as a matter of fact, now that you mention that, I can't remember which website, I think it's a northwestern suburb. The library takes on specific responsibility to keep, and they feel that they want the duty of keeping people informed. So they've gone and solicited from every, local entity, government entity, that they will be the repository and the entry point, but have links to the other folks' specific event. So and this is something I think we should decide. I have no idea whether we want to provide this service or if it even makes sense. But I do know that there are some libraries out there that use the library website as the entry point. So instead of having to figure out what's going on, I go to the library website. It's got a calendar of everything, and then the link would actually go back to that event on somebody else's calendar. It's is it a service we want to provide? I don't know.
We do have a local area or community page on our website that does link to all of the entities in town, our intergovernmental.
But the thing that person was specifically talking about is, again, I'll just use, say, the village as the repository would be, they would have, like, for Wednesday, May 2nd, these are all the events going on at the various governing bodies, and maybe it's non-government bodies if they want to go that far. But so, because at the end of the day, you're serving the same people, whether it's the Park District, the Library District, various school districts. I mean, we overlap each other a lot. So I think it's for simplification purposes. Because how many times, I'm sure you guys have heard it, or whether, I didn't know that was going on, or other things in the community, I didn't know that was going on, or that existed. So I think to make it user-friendly, or more simple, is there should be like a community calendar that all the governing bodies, and who maintains it is, that's something that could be discussed later on. Obviously, it should just have one central calendar that everybody could go to and say, okay, village has this going on today at a certain time, Park District, Library District, School District, etc.
I think it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but we're a district also, so we
No,
have to
I understand.
remember that.
No, yeah, we serve, yeah, I get that, but we're bigger than the village, and that's why, yeah, is the village the right one? Yes or no? I would say possibly, but if we want to take that on, that's fine too.
The one that I've seen, they don't stop at government bodies.
Well, it could go.
They go like, who was it that had the pancake? Was it
The Kiwanis,
Kiwanis?
yeah.
Okay, they would say the Lisle Women's Club has the garden gate. It's here to here.
Yeah.
They would say that, Kiwanis has the pancake house. And the reason that the library wants to do that is because they want to be perceived as the information powerhouse. Go to the library first, and they will tell you about everything else. Even if it's a link, it's like, the concept is outside in versus inside out thinking. So you look at everything from the taxpayer's perspective. You start with what does your clients, or in this case, taxpayers, how do we make it easy for them? And then we operationalize it inside. Traditionally, what organizations have done is inside out, which is kind of the reverse. You know, worrying about our operations and then pushing it out.
I think as Tatiana said, maybe that's one of the strategy we could possibly implement. Like what you guys talk about is community bulletin board. You know, everybody go to, you could be advertised, whether it's governmental or community events. That be a, you know, single point of entry, and that give you kind of the single user interface versus going to different ones. I mean, that's a great idea. I think we should be part of a strategy we want to implement. But that require resources, people keep out the bulletin board, require you go reach out to different communities. Hey, I'm the single, you know, source of information here if you want to know everything what's happening.
Well,
And those are kind of underneath advocacy, underneath partnership. And
Sure, and I would start probably with just the governing bodies, but I think when you're talking about the Kiwanis Pancake and Lions or Lisle Women's Club event, that's on that village electronic board right there in Short and Street 53. So again, they may be the best to start this, but again, if we want to do it, then fine. But I just think I think it's something worth exploring, whether it's done.
Somebody's going to grab that relationship,
Yeah.
and we need to make a conscious decision as to whether or not we want to be that central point of information, which I think is kind of going along with what libraries have traditionally done. They just haven't done it electronically. They do it like at circulation desks.
So
Today.
have we exhausted what we think advocacy means? As opposed to strategies for achieving it?
Yeah, we will talk later about strategies, but all good ideas. Okay. Next, awareness. Okay. This is similar. I had marketing under this. Marketing principles. I put community engagement. I also had outreach under here. Information output, social media, and then just physical signage for awareness. So what do we, any others?
Actually, awareness as being that making sure the community is aware of what we're doing, but also us being aware of what the community wants from us. So
Okay.
two-way communication back and forth.
What do you want me to write?
I think you should write all that down.
two-way communication. Just write two-way communication.
Just write down, put down CJ.
Okay, well, I'll put mine, I'll put J. So I put marketing principles. Do you think it's marketing principles that's under here?
I think it's marketing communications.
I mean, that probably would tie. I mean, I could see that tying with the advocacy and outreach.
All right. Community engagement. And then, what did you say, Jay?
Well, basically it was.
In, out.
Two-way.
It was
Two-way
two-way communication.
Two-way.
That they know what we're doing, they're aware of what we're doing, we're aware of what they want, what they need.
What about like physical signage?
Yes.
Is that what we mean
That's
by
important.
awareness?
That's
Yeah.
important.
Okay.
I think you said social media too, didn't you?
Yes. Anything else in terms of awareness?
You want to put that community calendar under that?
That's a strategy.
Okay.
It's a
That's
strategy.
a definition.
Okay.
When we're talking about awareness, what are we talking about? Anything else other than what we have here?
I think the physical signage cannot be underestimated, the importance of it. So I know we didn't get that one right away, but I think it's really important.
What about the word location? It could mean not just us, but it could mean the signage. Like, where is the signage? Do we need another, you know,
Well, I know that the
book
village, yeah, the
that they
village-
have?
well, the village has the one
The
on, like I
sign.
just meant the
Oh, that's
on
nice.
Short and Main Street.
What should you,
The
what,
street sign that you're talking about?
what is that a picture
The one that
of?
says library down the
It's,
street.
it's the street sign that you see, that's the person
Yeah.
holding the
It
book.
looks like an emoji.
Yeah, sorry.
And also, I think
Almost
talk about
embarrassed.
location, then it remind me of location of the materials, right? How you locate the materials that attract the most eye and
In the building, out.
Yes.
So like sign in,
Right.
like signage inside the building.
Okay, so in, out.
You know, when I think of awareness also, I think about word of mouth. I don't know how we could possibly quantify this, but I happen to think a lot of people become users of the library because someone told them about it. So I would like you to put word of mouth on there, and then we can decide what to do with it, if anything, later.
And I would like to include continuously monitoring, that's not monitoring, surveying the community for awareness. I mean, I realize we did it like once a year, but
Would that
actually.
be community engagement though? somewhat?
It's a little bit different. It's like surveying to see, it's one part of what the community engagement survey was.
Survey?
Yeah, it's like, typical example, you take the total number of people you want to survey, you divide how many months you want to survey them, and you make that many outbound calls. And people are willing to answer like 3 questions.
I had survey on there too. One of them. Okay, survey.
Now for signage, would that include like the village sign that's on 53 and First Street?
You mean anything we want?
Or I think Lisle Bank on Maple Avenue sometimes allows some.
Or the physical signs in the community, or our wooden sign out there, it could mean anything. But all I'm saying is that when we talk about awareness, we're talking about signage, we're talking about media presence, social media presence, we're talking about awareness in and outside of the building, we're talking about
How
how
about the
people
documents?
speak of us.
How about the documents we print and mail?
Documents? That's like marketing, but yeah. Are we good here? Okay. And no more room. Yep. Coming around the stretch here.
Sharing.
Okay, sharing services.
Unfortunately, I would start with the list that's under partnerships. You
Is
know.
there anything that is not under partnerships that this can do? That belongs under here?
Then you just put C partnerships. This probably be just a natural
Yeah.
combination.
We will
C.
save paper
Okay.
and move on to training. What do we mean by training?
I guess we have to start with for whom?
Right, so employees, trustees,
Like,
right?
Right.
Okay.
Both.
for the employees, is there like a mentoring program?
I could put mentoring under training.
Yeah, for like the employees, like a more seasoned or senior employee would train like a younger, or kind of mentor, not train, but mentor.
Volunteers too, right? There's volunteers.
I had the word, when we're talking about training, I put the word regularity. So like, or a schedule or a plan.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Or calendar, however you want to.
plan is good, yeah, calendar,
Calendar, plan. Or, I'll put regularity.
So kind of a question, like when employees go to training, they come back and give a presentation, folks in their department or library, well, okay.
When I.
Oh,
think of
I was
training-
thinking of different kind of training. What's
Like
that?
the employees train each other?
I was thinking about training like here as opposed to training outside.
No, actually, I was gonna go with that one too eventually, yeah.
Because you were just talking about training, like if you went to like a conference or
Sure.
something or a workshop and you
Sure.
received
Came
some
back,
kind of training
yeah.
and then you came back and presented
Yeah,
out.
self-training.
And I was
too.
thinking of like,
cross
cross
training,
training.
yeah.
Cross-training, yeah.
In the building.
Just cross-training, yeah, there you go.
see, that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to all be on the same page.
But I also
Talk
think
about-
trustee Swistak ideas about conferences, webinars, seminars, That's what I think.
Those kind of things.
And I also think the training could involve the public. People come to take courses here when they want to be trained on, for example, computer use, isn't that right?
So
programs? Okay, then if we're gonna start with programs, we need to include databases, because a lot of our databases, the purpose of them is for our constituents to get trained. You know, like lynda.com and.
The connections desk. I mean, what,
Types of databases.
Can we put public on there? We have employees, trustees, volunteers. Can we put
Yeah, why
public?
don't you put public, like in box those, the ones that we just mentioned.
What?
So
Where do you want
public-
public?
Right under volunteers,
Right,
right between volunteers and county. Yeah.
Do we ever consider core competencies? Like for instance, we might say that people doing a certain job should have these core competencies, and then we train to those competencies. And if we're, really advanced, we test to those competencies.
Yeah, we have core competencies as part of the evaluation process that the
Cool.
department heads have, yeah. But that's more of a internal.
Well, what about, it'd be interesting to find a way, and I don't know the answer, but to find a way, first of all, what are the core competencies required of us as trustees? And is there a way to train to those, and go to the extent?
Well, under trustees, if one of the strategies is to come up with a list of core competencies for trustees, that could be a strategy.
Got it.
We're talking about what we think about when we hear the word training and how it's defined.
Can I add the conferences, webinars, meetings? I would just call that professional development.
Good. Clubhouse turn, okay. Grant writing.
Everybody see it, that's it there.
Yep.
You guys okay with it?
Yes.
Scratch. Okay, grant writing.
I'd be more comfortable putting grant writing in a broader category. And I don't know if the broader category is fiscal responsibility, but that's not really it. Is it maybe, I don't want to say raising funds, but is there a better word for, fundraising? Because, grant writing is a part of helping us offset costs.
How about philanthropy?
Well, philanthropy includes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it includes an element of service.
Well, somebody could donate, like if they, in their will or something, when they pass away. they
Well,
give
yeah,
us money. Yeah.
but
And-
what's the
Or-
higher category called?
Philanthropy.
Yeah, I would just say, or like corporate contributions.
Or I would.
Or
put-
development.
I would put it under like a grant writing. I kind of agree with Liz. We probably can categorize under the bigger ones, like
That's what I'm thinking.
partnerships. Because partnerships talk about collaboration,
Yeah.
or we can put efficiency, could address the additional funding to help offset, costs. I mean,
But what
all
are
of
we-
other categories I think could fit
But you just
in.
want the definition.
Right.
Well, let's define it first. So,
Well, isn't there like a lot of grants out there?
Funding,
What's like
right?
the big
Yeah.
DuPage, is it DuPage Foundation? Is that what it's called?
there is one, yes.
Yeah, so like applying for grants from them or
So,
other large, like Ford Foundation, I'm just throwing it out as an example.
so we're talking about funding, right?
Sure, yeah,
Okay,
so-
we all agree.
Yeah.
So this, we don't think is its own, but it should go under something else. So, all I wrote under mine was, I saw this as more of a strategy, like having a plan to grant write.
Sure.
And to have like someone who's either dedicated to it or seeking it regularly or some kind of plan for it. That's what I pulled
Like
away.
for some of the larger, I believe there's like professional grant writers
There
out there,
are.
I think they get like a percentage of it.
But we've written, I mean,
Okay.
staff have written
Well,
grants.
I know, that was like, Will, when I think I first mentioned it at the last meeting, Will, because I think you were talking about the one that Gene got for the ESL. Remember like that one probably 3 years ago?
Mhm.
So there's that type of grant
Sure.
writing too, I guess.
I mean, there's large, there's
Yeah,
small.
but there's, I was kind of thinking more large, and I know there's the smaller ones as well.
So to me, if it's,
I mean,
if the
there's a-
goal is to grant write and to have this in our strategic plan and to seek grants on a regular basis or however we define it,
You know?
maybe it goes under like our organizational culture, like that is part of our culture now to start looking at grant writing.
Well, I'm not talking about creating a full-time job for that.
I'm just-
Well, let's not take it off the table, you know, that's a strategy, but we may decide to do that.
How about if we
Organizations
put
do
it
that.
under like alternative funding means or means of funding? Because, you know, it's kind of like the bigger umbrella category almost seems like it would be alternative funding, and then grant writing would be under it. And, you know, some other fundraiser, you know, having a bake sale, I know, I'm just kidding here, okay? Having a bake sale, you know, having a this, having a that, is alternative funding.
Or going back to partnerships, you know, with a corporation, maybe there's some funding mechanism from there, so yeah, that's.
But is grant writing a partnership?
No.
No, but it's part
It's part of alternative funding.
part of alternative funding. And so are many other things part of alternative funding.
I like alternative funding better than, because grants, sometimes you think it's only government, you apply a certain fund from the government, but I agree that there's a lot of corporate fund out there, but you still need to write something to say what your statement of work is, what is your project, why it's benefit the community and benefit the corporation.
And there
So
are
I
some,
think that's
yeah.
better.
And there are some
alternative funding.
not-for-profits like DuPage Foundation, and obviously there's just some large ones like, just, I don't know, like Ford Foundation. I know the state always has, even if they're broke, they still have some funds. I know, I think last year, I think the Park District, Lisle Park District had something in there for the canoe launch on the river, which they've been talking about for like 10 years. And then the Fire District, I think, got, I don't know, they maybe got $100,000 for something too. And so, I mean, even some of the local governments have gotten various small grants, or I don't want to maybe use the term earmarks from state, and even, I think the federal government, if I read in one of our, what's the thing we get every month, the reporter, I know, I think the federal government still earmarks.
Can you
Tons of
agree
money
then
to
for
that.
us to kind of reverse those and make the broader category alternative funding?
Well, the thing is, some of the philanthropy that you have access to isn't funding. Sometimes it's materials, sometimes it's services.
So is
So,
there
and some
a,
corporations, for example, will donate, might donate books, or might donate building materials, or might donate staff to service an event that we have. So,
and so is there a more global word we can substitute for funding? You know,
well, I like philanthropy. That includes both the monetary, the non-monetary, and it includes the idea about giving, which by definition is outside our current revenue stream.
That's so like philanthropy that I would give you. That's,
I see it as sort of there's a step before the grant writing. Like either you recognize a need or you recognize an opportunity. And then you want to figure out how can you take advantage of the opportunity or attack the need. And so, as Richard said, sometimes it's not necessarily monetary, it's just,
like an in-kind contribution.
yes, or maybe the building being open more, or different hours, or even the partnership kind of idea that we're you know, if you're looking at what is the need in the community, something that's not being met now, and yes, sometimes
And that
that's
is-
a grant to write to.
And that is in the mission of a local business. Win-win.
So
They
to me,
will-
that's a partnership, what you just described, Beth.
These are going to overlap.
Yeah, I think
You're gonna
that's why I was saying, even thinking this, and I think of this one, I think that's what I was saying, was grant writing go into this maybe too, but there was still, it's separate enough, but
I have
Okay,
to
Tatiana,
debate you
can-
on the grant writing.
Tatiana,
I don't think
can-
grant writing is, I don't think grant writing is a partnership. I would think grant writing
Can-
is
can you-
No, they
is
could be
a-
under the same umbrella, that we just need the
Yeah.
bigger.
Can you
umbrella.
But we
draw,
want a big, another umbrella?
can you draw a little Venn diagram with two circles that overlap a little bit? Grant writing is on the one side, partnerships is on the other, and of course they do overlap a little bit, but there's enough different that we should.
And what's the overarching title? That's what we're trying to find out.
just put philanthropy.
I have a problem with that, because I just looked up the definition, and philanthropy is what you do to achieve humanitarianism, to be a humanitarian. Philanthropy is from the perspective of somebody who's going to do something good for the library. It's not from the, we're not practicing philanthropy when we go out and we get alternative funding. It's like we're looking at it from 180 degrees.
Oh, I
We're-
agree with Liz.
We're asking someone else to do philanthropy. That's what the idea is.
That's exactly it. We're asking somebody to be
Well,
philanthropic,
Yeah.
whatever that word
Is that a
is.
word?
And I made it up.
You're giving donations, but then.
Okay.
I would just say, we have an idea, that we just have to clean that one up, I think. Just-
Yeah, but I don't think this is a one. I
Yeah.
think it's a two. Because I think that grant writing should go under culture, and then the alternative fundraising and giving and donations may be under partnerships.
That's fine.
Well, I want to hear what other people think. It's not.
I agree, grant writing should go under organizational culture. It should be part of our culture that we do that.
I think that's a good move. I mean, I'd go for that.
Sounds good.
Oh. Now, how about the other stuff? No, I won't write that part. Okay. Then how about,
Okay, so we're taking away grant writing. So what we have left on that board is alternative funding and then,
giving and donations.
okay, but this is, we're writing it from our perspective. So we're not giving anything.
But we were trying to solicit.
Okay, so we're
Recipients?
soliciting. Soliciting funds and other donations of like kind or whatever. And then the other thing is we gotta put under their foundation. I mean, right now, the library has no foundation, which is different than Friends Organization.
Right, but that's also a separate entity.
Sure.
I understand it is,
Mhm.
but you can, I just researched it, you can create a foundation of, that's part of your library, and there is a 5013C that the either ALA or ILA allows you to accept donations. They clear them, and they go 100% to your foundation, which is, actually can be part of the library.
We do have a library foundation, just not active, right?
Right?
Yeah.
On that note, I mean, we could sell things too, like with our, like we could sell mugs. We could sell, but that's a whole other,
Well, but it's alternative fundraising.
exactly.
So-
It's
so-
revenue sources.
Right, so maybe that's the word, revenue sources.
That's what I said 10 minutes ago. But, again, that's a goal. A goal might be to activate the foundation, to create a revenue stream by selling mugs. As far as the bookmarks. As far as definitions, though, I think, I would suggest that we're done with the definitions. We know what we mean right now.
We know what we mean, we just don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Exactly.
Let's move on.
That
Alrighty. And last but not least, lifelong learning.
My first question again is, like, by whom? Who are the lifelong learners?
everyone.
Well, right,
I would say
and that's true.
the public and the staff.
And the trustees.
And the volunteers.
And the volunteers.
And the volunteers.
And the philanthropists.
Yes,
See, everyone.
everybody.
Right,
Everybody.
but I was sitting with, brainstorming with a person of one, trying to figure this out. Solo brainstorming doesn't work.
So under lifelong learning, I always say that the library is a place of instruction and educational opportunity. And way back when, it used to be like a depository of books, but now we instruct people, we teach people, and there are also opportunities for people to learn things for themselves. So that's how I see lifelong learning. So I wrote programs, materials, staff, and then I wrote all ages when we're talking about, so, I mean, I think this means, and we talk about, all age.
And all demographic groups,
Right,
because they
demo,
might
yeah.
be.
Right.
So programs for lifelong learning, materials for lifelong learning, having the staff here to provide the instruction. Did anybody else have any other ideas about what that meant for them when they saw the term lifelong learning?
Well, for me, it kind of overlaps again some of these other ones, because what I was thinking, where we don't have the expertise in-house to do something, can we make a partnership with somebody who does? For instance, over in Naperville, there's a volunteer who will sit down and explain Medicare like nobody's business. And he'll come anywhere and do it. He'll do it even if you're not in Naperville Township. He'll do it to a group, he'll do it for free. He's a volunteer, but he is their expert. And so when I consider lifelong learning, I consider everything that you have on there, plus somehow finding a way to find the pockets in the community that have this expertise and can share it.
Did we have a program like that?
We do. We actually do that via programming. I know that Elizabeth seeks out any opportunity we can to provide free of charge, programming free of charge, from Social Security training to
Medicare.
Medicare, Medicaid.
But wasn't there, I mean, was, not just that, but wasn't
It's
there-
just an example,
yeah,
though.
but wasn't there like, probably 2-3 years ago, didn't we start like, I think it was called like an expert program, like if somebody had an expertise?
That was 6 years ago.
Was it that one?
It was Director Helikius.
Was it? Okay, so do we still do that, or?
No.
That's-
It was not well attended.
Oh, yeah, I remember there's a lot, I think. Now, the one thing.
And we were kind of getting, we were, also, I think there was some, and the reason it was, I think there was some concern about having experts or businesses come in and then it being a business,
Sure.
like promotion,
Sure.
advertisement.
No, yeah.
That was a concern.
Well, then kind of to segue into that, this would probably actually also go into partnerships with the lifelong learning. I'll just use an example, like sometimes people come in for like computer training, but then, you know, I don't want to say it's beginner level that we do, but sometimes they probably want a little bit more advanced. I mean, at some point, then it's like, okay, that's too much, maybe we should hand you off to like COB, College of DuPage.
We refer all the time.
Okay.
We refer all the time, and we actually have upticked our programming, so we have some 101 classes, we have 201 classes.
Oh, yeah.
Some more advanced stuff.
But, so I don't know if you want to put referral, like kind of referral.
But
Well, you know what?
this isn't
Okay,
operation.
all right.
That's
I
like a
think
strategy,
that's a
and not a
standard.
definition. yeah.
But it would be a nice placeholder there, even if it's not like technically at the right level. It'd be just a nice placeholder to write down so that we remember at all times to think about it.
It's like tactical, some of the tactical things that
Yeah.
maybe, maybe my view of life learning a little bit related to, just looking back, diversity, inclusion, we talk about how we're serving different demographics, and what kind of services and programs. And also everybody learn differently. Some people, end of the day, like paper. Some people always like digital. So it's
That's
about
a great point.
how we provide services and programs that reach a span of the folks that we say want the diversity inclusion category that we want to serve.
So I'm right, diverse ways of learning.
And actually, to piggyback on that, I know the Park District, at either last meeting or the meeting prior, now it's even on the front page of their website, they're soliciting suggestions about, for programming, for like diverse programming.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you want to, I don't know if that goes on that or the diversity one, but maybe like actually soliciting ideas from the general public about, for more diversity programming or whatever.
That's a strategy.
Okay.
I
When
know
I-
you-
Yeah, I'm gonna step back.
I know you already have the materials on there, but one of the things that I've been noticing more and more too is the displays that are in the different departments,
that's
because
important.
that helps me. I'm like, oh wait, maybe I should read about this, or maybe I should pick up a book about this. This looks interesting to me, and that's how I take things for my kids too, is because those displays are there and they're thematic, or, you know, something that's, oh, I should probably grab something from that and then learn that.
When I
too.
think of lifelong learning, I also think about book clubs, like people engaging in interest, maybe sometimes in retirement. Book clubs, film clubs,
We got that.
Yeah.
programs.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we are done with our list. So now what do we do?
Did Liz want to add fiscal
Oh,
responsibility?
right. After we've discussed all this, is this its own bucket, or does it go under something else? Is it a guiding principle? Well, let's define it first. What do we mean by fiscal responsibility?
Well, I link it to, I'm kind of linking it to database decision-making in that when you operate in a fiscally responsible way, you make sure that
Data-driven decisions.
the cost justifies what you're producing. And you can do that through a cost-benefit analysis, a break-even analysis, and I think it also includes finding out what the taxpayers, how they define fiscal responsibility.
Give me some words, Liz, about how you think, okay, I'll put taxpayers.
The other things I said was making decisions based on, you know, is the cost justified?
Sort of cost benefit?
Yeah, cost benefit.
Before we go too far down that road, cost-benefit analysis has some fatal flaws. And there's lots of ways to quantify the effectiveness of what you're doing, but let's bracket cost-benefit, because I'll never agree that that's the best way to do it. Let's leave it up there for now, just to remind us that we're talking about a method of quantifying effectiveness, but there's better ways to do it.
The other thing I would put under there is benchmarking.
You know, I'm seeing some repeats.
Yeah.
And I'm looking under efficiencies and data-driven decision-making, and some of these terms we're using under there.
Yeah, I would, and this goes to share, I would even say like shared services and efficiencies.
Data-driven and efficiencies. I just want to write this down so I remember.
While you're writing, could you bracket cost benefit? Because that's going to bug me. Just put brackets around it.
I'll put it, and I'll put your RF next to it.
Okay. That's my RFID.
Okay.
And while we're on the subject, could we agree that fiscal stewardship? Well, I mean, take out. I would suggest we replace the word responsibility with stewardship.
What do we think?
I'd rather have responsibility.
I'd rather have responsibility.
I'd rather have stewardship.
I
mean,
think it resonates with the taxpayers.
I
They are our boss, and so to me, we need to change our communication to match the words that they are saying and using in their communication.
So what are we saying is the difference between responsibility and stewardship?
Well, we definitely want to be stewards. We want to be stewards of the public's revenue. When people tell me fiscal responsibility, or when that word is brought up, it almost implies that somehow we're short of being responsible, and I don't want to get into that. We are very responsible. We've always been. I don't want to cop to an unfair criticism by,
I think
that way.
fair.
What we want to do is be stewards of the public's funds. So I think fiscal stewardship.
Well, I'll put stewardship as a word here, but I mean, what do other people think? I'm only hearing from like 3 people.
That's because we ate our Wheaties.
Did you put shared services down by that little area down there?
Are you gonna know what you wrote later?
Yes.
It seems again like we're into strategies.
Everything we've written falls under different buckets so far.
We're gonna get there.
Yeah,
We're gonna start to consolidate
That's
real
really
soon,
that-
Yeah.
because it's
But-
8:30 almost.
And the big issue, the difference with this one is that other things that have shared things with other buckets, this one is definitely underneath a lot of other things. Like you could fit fiscal responsibility under partnerships, but fiscal responsibility could not be all encompassing over partnerships. Partnerships is more than just that. Same thing with efficiencies. Efficiencies is more than just fiscal responsibility. but fiscal responsibility definitely goes underneath that.
So it's a guiding principle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, if
Yeah.
anything, it definitely is not a focus
Yes.
area.
I agree with that.
Yes.
Fiscal stewardship is a guiding principle, I agree.
Responsibility.
Okay, all right. So now our job, I'm so glad you have a sheet in front of you. I want to talk about, now that, I think it was a really good exercise because now we're all on the same page about
You're good at this.
how we're
Tatiana.
defining,
I know,
good
you
at
get facilitator.
Oh, yeah, she gets my vote.
defining, we know what the definitions are, and you see how we voted. So let's look at, we definitely know facility is a bucket, or a focus area.
Focus area.
Focus area. Use my own definition. Can we agree that technology is a focus area? Yes? Okay. So that's pretty clean.
So we have two clean ones.
Okay. Anyone wanna offer up number 3? And then we can debate it.
There's a couple of them.
Combine advocacy and outreach with awareness.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was,
Like
that was
that?
one of mine.
Yes.
Yep.
I agree with
Okay.
that.
Advocacy.
That was one of mine that I had here.
Awareness.
So these two combined.
Mhm.
Okay, so advocacy, facility.
And the other one that could be broad and take in other ones would be organizational culture, which could take in diversity, it could take in partnerships, it could take in efficiencies, it could take in sharing services, training, grant writing, and lifelong learning. It could all fall under organizational culture. I
Do we
don't know
like that?
if we want, that's too broad, but
I mean, and organizational culture, I think as part of the definition is talk about the values. What do we value, right?
mhm.
So that would guide everything we do underneath it.
We like that because remember, we're going to list strategies and they can include diversity, they can include efficiencies, they can include. This is the broad category. If we think we need to focus on our organizational culture and address it. Okay?
Or do we need to focus on something more narrower? Is that your question?
No, I mean, these are the broad categories and then we can list below them how we achieve success under that broad category.
Probably organizational culture and training for sure, I would say, could go together.
So we have 4 now.
Well,
I would like to see us, not to disagree all the time with Tom, but I would like to see us do something along lifelong learning.
yeah, you could put that.
And I really don't know that we need to focus on organizational culture, because if we're, like, let's say 80 to 90% of where we want to be, do you then want to create it as one of your top 5 areas to focus on? I'd rather focus on something like a lifelong learning and put training under there, put all those other things under there.
The problem is that organizational culture, I feel, is something that if you may be at 80 or 90, if you don't make it a focus, that's going to go down. You're never going to stay, if you're staying stagnant, you're falling behind.
Well, I guess we'd have to say, what's our goal in narrowing it down to 3 or 4 things? If it's, are we making huge improvements in some areas? Maybe we have huge improvement topics, and then secondly, maintaining performance topics. Because I think that there's a difference, and I think you approach them differently.
We haven't started ranking them. I think the only thing ranked was top 2, right? And the rest of them, we can list them and rank them, because not everything on the list has to be go on. We have to think about trade-offs, something we make a conscious decision we're not going to do, because either it's organizational resources or priorities. So therefore, we don't have to be all-inclusive just because it's appeared on the list.
And again, these are our focus areas. These are going to be, we're going to equally focus on all of these in a strategic plan. It's not like facility is our number 1. We're going to have strategies to achieve facility goals, but in our strategic plan, these are the focus areas where we're gonna pay attention.
And we're gonna use those guiding principles of those other things that we've talked about to achieve those goals. It's not like the things that aren't up here right now are just gone.
And we'll have an action plan on how to get there.
So maybe this is, you know, if one goes under, A goes under B or B goes under A, as long as we, you know, get all the
These are
subpoints.
basically headings, you
Yeah.
know, where we'll list.
The partnerships and the partnerships and efficiencies for sure, and data-driven decisions.
I mean, I like organizational culture because as Jay said, it will encompass a lot of things that can become a guiding principle, how we do things. Because data-driven decision is really just the things with how we do things. It doesn't have to be a goal, but everything we do, we want to make sure there's gonna facts, you know, and we talk about.
So you're saying this would go under, like?
Yes.
It would go under more than one place.
Diversity, inclusion, how we would select materials and things like we want to consider all the
Right.
demographic needs. And training, we think training is important. Partnership is important because we look at that's how interaction with both intergovernment and also with the businesses. So I think on organizational culture, it's almost all these little things become how we're going to do things. Not necessarily to say we're going to focus it, but every time we take on a project or activity to say, hey, does it fit our organizational culture?
So
Should we
here's a
take
good
on
way
that
of
project?
thinking about it, piggybacking off of what Longry just said. So with these four, everything else that's left, can you find somewhere to put it under one of these?
And more than one.
Right. Or
Well,
else.
and can
Is there
I-
something that can't fit under one of these?
Yeah, partnerships and efficiencies, I would say.
Those would go under organizational culture.
Organizational culture. Or also the outreach and awareness. I mean, I think it can go into there too.
Under-
Advocacy and.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Under organizational culture, could we add process optimization? Because I think if we make that part of the organizational culture, then we, on a day-to-day basis, even if it's a little process, you say, is this the best way that this should be done?
Isn't that efficient?
Isn't that efficiencies?
They're related.
But what you're saying is you want to make minor processes every day more efficient, right?
Right.
So how is that not efficiencies?
Well, because I would think, it's true that I'm making it more efficient. But I would want process optimization to be listed as something we do as part of our culture. Because, you know, there are companies and organizations out there that say, we're gonna wait 20 years and then we're gonna do a re-engineering or a big project. And I think if we can make the organizational, like somebody mentioned the other day, if we replaced these lights with another kind of light, you know, it would save money, we'd have less times we'd be going out there. And I'm just concerned that efficiencies, people don't think of the day-to-day little things, like the light bulb.
No, I agree. I think we don't want to get that far into the weeds just yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
for this.
I think that
I
might be
put
the
it
discussion for
under-
the next time.
Right,
Put
as
it
long
under
as it's a
there.
placeholder.
Yeah.
Okay. no
The
problem.
question that I had was, I like the way that Liz connected lifelong learning and training. Is that sufficiently met under organizational culture? Or is that a fifth focus area that we need?
Well, I had it as one of my focus areas,
Why?
lifelong learning, because that is a large umbrella.
But I mean, I had the three: organizational culture, training, and lifelong learning, all kind of grouped into that number 4.
I'm with Tatiana. I think lifelong learning is important enough to bracket out as its own focus area.
I want
Yeah.
partnerships and efficiencies in there more, or refined fiscal responsibility. So unless you want to go to 6, I'm fighting for these.
I mean, how does that not fall into organizational culture?
I want this explicit.
No, but I'm asking you, how does it not?
Because that could be, that's wide ranging, that might just be more organizational. I want partnerships and efficiencies, operational efficiencies.
But culture is a wide-
Then put slash efficiencies and partnerships, then combine them.
But if
Well,
we
very
make,
different.
if we make
That's the
organizational,
point, to make it.
No, I mean, it would go under
Yeah.
everything, wouldn't it?
I'd
Fiscal
rather see it-
responsibility on
I'd rather-
technology, on
I want to
facility.
I'd rather see a focus
I think it would go
on
under all
that.
of them.
but if we're making, I mean, this is both internal and external. we're making a statement by the top 4 or the top 5. And I just want us to be aware that it's both an internal, we're sending messages. And my concern is that if I look at those up there, they feel to me, and this is just from a taxpayer's perspective, like 3 of the 4 have to do with mostly the library. And it takes me extra thought to tie how a better facility is going to impact me on a daily basis. And it takes me extra thought to think of how technology is going to, and same thing with organizational culture. That feels very focused on the library. Number 3 feels outwardly focused. And if we could have another one like fiscal responsibility, it would balance out our top 5. Because I really think we have to make sure that we make these issues that we're going to focus on and issues that resonate both internally and externally.
Well, that's why we have stuff underneath these. We're not just going to list 4 things and post it and say, now you
We're
think of the
done.
rest.
We will elaborate.
How often do you think people read past?
If they're
The big-
going so far as to find our strategic plan and they're that invested in it, they're going to read past it. They're not
Okay,
just,
then you've talked to different people that,
And didn't we talk too about how, like, when we had that discussion about the different ones we looked at and how some of them had that first page that
One
just
page
had
or
like
introduction.
the little introduction and it just kind of
Yeah.
little information and then it was further pages that had more detailed information, but like the real like bullet points and stuff.
And
to
let's
start it.
Let's remember when we create this plan, it's not just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lists. We're going to have an introduction. We're going to have a statement from the board that precedes the plan.
Besides that, if we have this plan in operation for a number of years, we may well pull out 1 or 2 of the strategies or goals or objectives for special focus. What I'm thinking of, Tom is interested in partnerships and efficiencies. I'm interested in diversity. And I notice that diversity is not mentioned among the first 4 at the moment, but that doesn't bother me. I imagine it'll go under number 4. And I will see to it that I say as much as I can in the next few years about having a diversity campaign all over our website, all over our materials. So, you know, we can refer to the strategic plan, but this isn't going to be I associate myself with Will. This isn't going to be the main thing people read.
well, I will tell you that research states that people read from left to right, left top to right bottom, and they spend an approximate 3 seconds. So my experience is that the people who want to understand real quick what the library's doing, they're going to look at those 4 or 5 things. They're not going to read the letter, they're not going to read this. I mean, we have to think that how people, I mean, everything is video, everything is 3 seconds, everything is sound bites today. The way that we communicated with people in the past is not the way that people absorb information now.
Well,
What
I'm
people-
going to give people credit and the ability to read a heading and maybe 3 or 4 bullet points, and then we can elaborate underneath all of that. I mean, in detail, action plan it. But reading a
The
heading with some
details
bullet
are for
points-
us. The details are not outward. I mean, and if they're gonna list, these are the 5 things or the 4 things the library is going to go after. And if they're the 5 things that we're gonna focus on, I think the number 1 thing that's gonna resonate with our constituency is the term fiscal responsibility.
I think it's diversity. The people who I talk to, the voters I talk to, are very interested in issues of LGBTQ, of religious diversity, of differently abled people. And again, it might not appear in, bold font on our strategic plan, but eventually it's going to be the focus probably of some major initiative on our part, and that's where we'll communicate our values to the community. So I hope we don't spend the rest of this meeting arguing about this. Let's agree on something let's agree that the important points are in there, irrespective of where exactly they fall, and save some of the arguments for the future.
Partnerships and shared services need to be number 5.
Fiscal
I disagree.
responsibility.
Do we
Disagree.
need a number 5?
What? You did not agree to
No.
a number.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm good with the 4 as they are.
I can't agree to the 4 without adding fiscal responsibility.
How is that not part of your organizational culture?
How can
Because
you-
organizational culture is focused inward. Fiscal responsibility is focused outward.
And the
How am
partnerships.
I using your money? Organizational culture comes after that, and that's how I'm taking the money that you have and using it inside.
Organizational culture is how you as a library decide how to be fiscally responsible and how you as a staff work with all those volunteers, trustees, work with your community in order to be fiscally responsible. You foster a effective culture to be able to do that.
See, I disagree. If we don't, especially call out that one of our top 5 is fiscally responsible, number one, I don't think it'll get the focus that it needs.
Well, I think we need to look back at what we are talking about in terms of organization. We're talking about what Will just said, our values.
But there's nothing about, except for potentially grant writing, there's nothing here about fiscal issues.
Because at that point, we had the other ones.
Yeah, but partnership and shared services are not necessarily organizational culture. Those could be, it's intergovernmental agreements perhaps, it's working with not-for-profits.
But I think they could be.
Of course they could be.
If we want to make that as one of the objectives and the goals under
We can slice and dice this
organizational
any way we
culture.
want.
We can, we saw that there was a lot of crossover amongst some of these areas and that, that if we want to add, make sure that one of the goals or objectives under organizational culture is shared servicing and partnerships.
Foster
Yeah.
partnerships.
Fostering partnerships.
Yeah.
And surely falls under that.
And for
Yeah.
that matter,
Absolutely.
diversity.
As does diversity.
Having an organizational culture that does not prioritize partnerships and efficiencies and fiscal responsibility is not an organizational culture that we want to build.
Right, exactly.
Like, if
And
we-
I
what
agree
we
with that.
deem as our
But the
values.
number, are we doing everything for the library and the staff, or are we including what the board's number 1 goal is? And the board is tasked by Illinois state law to use taxpayers' funds in a way that is fiscally responsible. And that's not addressed there.
but that's part of the culture we're trying to cultivate.
Yeah, but the culture, how many employees do you have
The
there?
culture includes the trustees.
I know, but as an afterthought.
What?
Why?
As an afterthought.
Why?
We could put organizational culture as number 1, No, we could, let's do, number 1 is organizational culture. Underneath it, then we have all these things, and then maybe facility number, we don't have to
These
rank
aren't
them.
in
This is all
order.
important
Right.
things,
This is not
right?
in
This is not
order.
like the last thing we see is organizational culture,
Right.
no.
No.
This is, we're
This-
gonna have equal
Are
importance.
you saying this is an afterthought because it's last year?
No, I'm saying the trustees and the goals of the trustees and what the trustees should be responsible for is an afterthought.
And this
And I'm
is-
not saying that the library staff doesn't think of the trustees. I'm saying that if we're doing, what's the number 1 thing that the trustees should be responsible for? I think it's not listed there. And I think it's an area that has been, the way it works is, the constituents hire the trustees. And if the trustees, if we don't state out what our number 1 thing is that we're going to accomplish, then we're not answering to the people who hired us.
Well, that could be the first bullet point under
But this is
organizational
why I think it
culture.
needs to be a focus group too, because this community does not have, in my opinion, really good intergovernmental agreements. With maybe the exception of the park district and the school district 202, but even that, we need to start sharing more services, which other communities are starting to do a lot more and more. And that's why I think it needs to be a focus, partnerships and shared services, whether it's intergovernmental, working with other not-for-profits, just collaborating with other entities.
Okay, I've heard a lot from 2. Can I hear from others, please? And I've heard from Will.
I like your idea about organizational culture, putting the fiscal responsibility.
Like
If that
number
is the
1,
first,
If that's the first bullet point.
if that's the first bullet point. It has to be addressed, I absolutely agree.
I'm good with those 4. I like the idea of organizational culture being the first one that you see when you're looking at it. Because right now, if you look at, you see facility at the first, you know what people are gonna think.
Yeah, new building.
Exactly.
But yeah, but this is not in order.
I know it's not. I know it's not in order.
That's
But in
the
terms of
same thing.
optics,
But you know,
in
it's
the
what you
future, we need to be
prefer.
careful, that's what I was saying.
Yes.
Optics, like if we create a one page, the first one we list is under, it is organizational culture underneath, maybe the first bullet item is either efficiency or fiscal responsibility, or whatever,
Right.
we wanted to
We're
agree.
gonna
Right,
tell
yes.
people what we mean by
Right,
this.
exactly, and then you have a clear definition what that is.
Yeah.
So I like organizational culture underneath, I like a partnership and data-driven decision, diversity, and then, of course, the efficiency or slash fiscal responsibility. Those are four things I think would be really good underneath organizational culture that we want to create. Or even life learning, I'm not sure whether we not deserve a different bullet point or just right underneath the organizational culture. Assuming diversity inclusion will reflect something that address the needs for lifelong learning.
Elizabeth?
I like the four as they are. I think everything falls under beautifully, as long as you said diversity, inclusion, and lifelong learning, if those are part of our organizational culture. I'm very happy with that.
And I had lifelong learning as a 5, but I think it also, I will concede, it belongs here. It's part of our culture. It's what we are.
I'm happy with the 4 that are there.
Happy with the 4?
Yep, I'm good with it.
I think we have a,
Agree to disagree.
okay.
I don't know.
All right. How do you want to proceed? We're at this end of our time.
Yes.
And we have a whole other list of things to discuss, but since facility is one of our focus areas, we can then plan our next meeting and talk about those tallied results. Okay? So I know Beth has some dates for our next meeting. Pull out your calendars, please.
Okay. Starting in June. Unfortunately, there was really nothing else in May.
And by nothing else, what do you mean, please?
There were no evenings Monday through Friday with a room available.
Have we ever considered, and I think we talked about this in a previous strategic planning meeting, have we ever considered a weekend meeting?
Considered a what?
A weekend meeting?
I did not pull out weekends.
Does the committee think that's an interesting idea?
I missed the first week.
A weekend?
A weekend.
Yeah, but before, there's no Monday, Fridays available or something?
There's, in May, there's
We can
no,
move to June.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, you guys can all come to my house and we could set up, I'm serious.
No, no.
Do we really need to be,
Yes, it's
Yeah.
gotta be.
it's gotta be
Yeah,
here?
it's gotta be, it's gotta be an open.
Okay, how about an open place? I don't care, but to me, it's just frightening to delay the strategic planning.
Why don't we find out what's available for all of us in June
Yeah,
first,
'cause
and then
my
maybe
May's
go
pretty
back
booked,
to,
yeah. I got my May's
May
pretty
is-
crowded. Yeah.
May is very
May is
busy.
crazy
Yeah.
right.
in my
So
world.
I would prefer June, I guess, even though it's.
Okay, so the first day in June was June 6th, and that is a Wednesday.
I'm in North Carolina that day.
I'm not available that day.
The next time was June 18th on a Monday.
can't do it.
Okay. The next one was June 20th. That's a Wednesday.
Ding, ding, ding. Okay, June 20.
My calendar's on the refrigerator at home and I don't remember it because I had a crash of my electronics. So I'm gonna have to go home and check my refrigerator.
How about June 21st? That's a Thursday.
Nope,
That was a no?
nope.
Did we say 20th is good?
20, well,
Wednesday,
Wednesday, the 20th.
no one
yeah.
has said
It is-
no yet.
It is
So
not
then-
good for me, but
Which one?
the 20th is not good for me.
Okay.
And now
So is
Thursday.
it a no or this is a tentative
For who, me?
for the
Well,
20th?
we have to go with the majority, I think.
Yeah,
We're
no,
running
I mean,
out of
if,
dates.
yeah.
I mean, if we go back to the 6th, am I the only one that can miss the 6th?
No, I won't-
Apparently.
I won't be there.
Oh, let's.
I can't.
Elizabeth was
Okay.
out. Okay, so that was 2 was out.
Is there another date in June, or is that the last date in June?
27th.
That's not available.
Oh,
So 20?
So the days were 6, 18, 20, and 21. So there's somebody
No,
not.
21 was, well, not good for me. I'm
Two
teaching
people
a
can't
Tuesday,
make it.
Thursday
Yeah.
course.
Okay, so it was June 6th, but that one's out because 2 people can't make it? Okay.
Great.
What was the next one? June 20?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that one I have to get back to you on? And what's the
And
other
Emily
one?
can't make the 20th, but.
But that's
June 18th.
But that's 2 people, so that's the bump.
Well,
up.
No, I'm
you
the
don't
only-
know that you can't make it.
Right, I
So
don't
you
know.
need to let us know, like, right
Okay,
away.
so that's a maybe.
June 18th is the other one?
June 18th was, and there was somebody who couldn't
Oh, I
make
said
it.
no, I mean, I could potentially.
I can't do it the 18th. I'm out of town. And I missed one already. I've already put in my dates that I'm gone. I'd appreciate some consideration.
No.
I got something. June 18th is not good for me, but I could skip what I have and do that, but I'm booked that day as well.
This is what you get when you have a committee of the whole.
Yes.
So-
Can we, once we decide in June, and I will get back to you about the 20th, can we go ahead and pick one day or 2 days a month, and we can give ourselves the time back if we cancel them? But my concern is, it's very difficult to schedule when we wait until we're in the prior month.
Well, I was gonna do July. Would you like to hear July?
Sure.
Well, before we go that far, do we want to talk about a weekend meeting?
I mean,
No.
I am always here, I can make any meeting, but this is for you to make a decision on.
The weekend could work, it depends upon what time. I gotta be very sensitive to the time
Weekends
zone
can't work
difference.
at any time.
For
For
you?
you or
For us, it's not gonna work.
why won't it work?
It's not gonna work, Tom.
Well, why? You
Well,
just
I
can't say
mean,
because. Why?
who's opposed to a
Yeah,
weekend?
I am, for starters.
Okay, that's one. Who else?
They're very
I
difficult for
personally
me.
am.
It's difficult.
Okay.
They're very difficult
No,
for
I
me.
understand staff, I mean, you guys are,
Yeah.
no,
I'm here a lot of weekends anyways.
right,
So.
right. No, I,
Working weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have dates for in July, Beth?
I do. Let's see. For July, the
Wait, before we go, June 20th is kind of penciled in, right?
yes.
Okay, all right.
Please, yes.
All right, July, sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the 2 Wednesdays. Those were, the 18th and the 25th were the two.
Not the 18th for me.
I can't either. Go
Okay.
on.
The 25th.
I can do that.
I gotta
I
get
can
back
do
to you.
that.
I can do that.
Okay, so
I have
that's,
nothing on my calendar right now for that.
okay, I can go back to the early part of July. July 5th, that's a Thursday.
I don't know that I'll be back in town by then.
Okay, the 6th would be the same thing, that's a Friday night. I mean, that is from the 4th of July being in the middle of the week. Okay, there's Monday, the 9th.
Anybody?
That's
Open?
fine.
It's open
Yeah.
right
July
now.
I'll
9th?
just,
I can
I'll
do
have to
that.
let you know.
Okay. And Thursday, the 19th.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
So it looks like we've got June 20th, July 9th, July 25th.
Correct.
Oh, July 9th too? July
Yeah.
9th?
Yeah, we're just penciling those in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna
that's
stay
July
those on the
6th is
calendar.
out, the Friday is out, July 6th.
Yeah, because people were saying they might be out of
Oh,
town still
okay.
from the 4th of July.
Okay, could you
Okay.
just, for those of us that are slow, could you just run through the ones that we're penciling in? Because I think there are 4 of them.
Three.
Three.
June
Okay.
20th.
June 20th.
July 9th, and July 25th.
I got it.
Are we assuming 7 PM on all of these?
Yep.
Yes.
Do you want to hear August?
I'd like to hear us go out, I mean, because we can always cancel it.
Okay. August on Wednesdays is August 1st and the 15th.
I will not be here August 1st.
I should be here.
So that's one
15th,
person
yeah.
out, and I'll get back to you.
August 1st, and you said 15th?
15th.
How about 15th?
I think
So far, anyway.
Okay. We will block those dates.
So we are to block these, is that correct?
But we're gonna block them
Until-
on our calendar so
Oh.
we can have a room.
Yep.
And our next meeting, we have penciled in for June 20th.
Yep.
Okay. So homework is going to be thinking about these 4 areas and what falls beneath these 4 areas. So we can come to agreement on that. And I will transcribe all of these lovely notes and send them off to you to think about.
Next, the really fun part starts, where we could dive down and talking about the goals, objectives, strategies under each of these focus areas.
Well, may I ask a question about the other dates? I realize we've got June 20th penciled in, but the other dates that there was no disagreement that, I mean, that the majority of us could be here, can we choose one just to get it on the calendar?
I believe we're penciling in that
All of them?
All of those.
All, okay,
Yes.
okay, I didn't
So,
understand.
so there's 5, right, that we're penciling?
5.
No, there's 5.
There's 5.
June 20th,
Yeah.
July 9th, July 25th, August 1, August 15th, is that correct?
Yep, that's what I have.
Yep.
August 1st did have a no.
August
Oh.
1st, yeah, did have a no.
Oh,
so
what was the
Oh.
no?
Will.
Just
Will.
Oh,
said
Will,
no.
okay.
Well, what's our kickout clause? Is it 1, is it 2? Is it- I mean, I'm serious.
I think we're just keeping track of what it was
Yeah.
at. It's not gonna, unless there's like 3 or 4 other people that, just to keep track of, tell you that I was also.
And when we start rolling towards the end, we will make sure everyone is
These are
here.
the dates.
I think we'll make sure everyone can
June
do
20th,
Can we have
July
a
9th,
calendar for
25th,
strategic planning?
August 1,
Like what
August
are we
15th.
gonna achieve? We're meeting, this time, and we're meeting this time, and we're meeting this time. And then we expect to have like draft 1 of the strategic plan done by such and such a date. Because I would like, I mean, even if they end up being wrong, they give us a goal and they let us, strategic planning touches so many other things that it would allow us to see where everything else is gonna fall in.
I think part of that was just learning who's available when, and I think we did that tonight, at least through August, so we can think about that.
Right, because they're, like, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So my concern is, I don't know what our end game is. I don't know when we're setting goals for when we're gonna achieve something. I mean, because the way that it's going, it's like, we don't have an idea how long is this gonna take.
Well, hopefully after the next meeting, we'll be a little bit closer to something, and we might get a feel after the next 2 meetings.
And just knowing this right now through August, I can do a very general map out.
That would be great.
Could I also point out that if we think we could do our business in a very short amount of time, we could schedule a part of a board meeting or even before a board meeting to meet. If we have usually the June and July board meetings don't have a whole lot going on, so we could schedule, and we'd have to adjourn and then re-adjourn so that the other members of the committee could be voting members, but they would be there on the second Wednesday anyway. So we could do some of this an hour before a board meeting or during a board meeting if we wanted to.
Well, the only thing that I'm concerned about is, like, you and I discussed, Tatiana, taking one of the strategic planning meetings, I believe, and spending half of it, let's just say an hour, for the technology group to come in and potentially give us a plan and review what they would recommend. And then that meeting, we would also potentially do demographics, like an update on the demographics that we're serving. And I don't remember, was that gonna be, I mean, you and I were just brainstorming. Was that gonna be a strategic planning meeting? Was that gonna be a board meeting?
What we discussed was technology in general, and I suggested when we get to, if the committee decided that technology was a focus area, we could have our IT manager attend one of the strategic planning meetings and discuss like a technology plan and things like that. So that was a suggestion. But who knew that was, I mean, we made that decision tonight, so.
And I think that's a good point, because even things like partnerships, efficiencies, lifelong learning, I think we could share what the library is doing currently and refer back to our studies that have been done in the past few years and see, are we Are we there?
So what do you guys all think about, I mean, something that really underlies everything we do is our demographics. I would think most people would agree. So what about having a presentation on the demographics? You know, when I started researching them, I thought we had a higher percentage of retired people than we did. It was kind of an eye-opener for me to see how, you know, the age distribution was. You know, what the average age is. It's higher than I thought it would be. So I'm just wondering, is it worth reviewing demographics because that impacts everything we do?
Maybe that's something we can look at after the next meeting.
And
when
it
we
shows
sort of-
up on.
Yeah, when we dig down into the
Diversity,
goals.
inclusion, or lifetime learning, all these
Mhm.
also relate to demographics. When we get to the strategy and some of the key objectives we want to accomplish, then we need to refer to that. If there's a need for update, bring somebody expert in on demographics, I think that's something I think we're open to have a discussion. I mean, I agree that's important.
How expert do you need?
I-
Do you want to see the work I've done before we pay for it?
I think the best thing to do is refer to some of the materials that were handed out earlier when we started our strategic plan. I think some of this material is already in there.
There's some, and we can elaborate and find out new information too.
Do you know what year that was? Like, did they do 2011 or 2012? And the reason I'm asking is because there's 2016 data available now.
We can
Well,
update
we have
whatever-
2017 data also from, you know,
Gale?
from Gale Analytics.
Okay.
So we'll get there.
Okay.
So we have our homework. We have our next 5 days penciled in. So get ready to come back next time and start digging into the goals and objectives for the focus areas. So, is there a motion to adjourn?
Before we do we want a definition and of goals versus objectives? Because I know that gets really fuzzy. And do we want to, like, maybe somebody, like, asking you, Tatiana, you're probably the best person to say this, when we say a goal, this is what we mean. When we say an objective, this is what we mean.
I think there's some blending of those terms, and I looked at a bunch of strategic plans before, and then just before this meeting, some of we're calling it focus areas, some were called objectives. Below that, some strategic plans called the bullet point strategies, and then listed action plans to achieve those strategies. So there's a lot of blending of the terms. That's why I wanted us to be all on the same page of the terminology. So.
I move to adjourn.
I have one quick question. Is the blue part, is that just gonna fall under the facility then? That part?
Yeah. We'll go there when we get there.
A motion to adjourn, is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.